A second member of President Biden's cabinet visits St. Louis, why Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm was in town. It's the launch of the State Fair, where you can see politicians and fried food across Missouri and Illinois, all happening right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. He ran for governor in 1998 in Illinois and served in Congress for a decade, but you don't see many of his kind anymore. A Democrat from deep southern Illinois. Glenn Pochard is now on the record, and he's out with a new book, Son of Southern Illinois, Glenn Pochard's Life in Politics and Education. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you with us from Murfreesboro. We want to get into your book in just a moment, but we want to talk politics first. How do you explain the shift in southern Illinois? Democrats used to have more of a fighting chance. Did the party go too far to the left? Did the Republicans tap into something new? What changed?
Well, I don't think the party has gone too far to the left. I think, Southern Illinois is a very rural area. It's always been conservative, even for Democrats in this area for the most part. There's a lot of things here that lend themselves to the present Republican philosophy. Many evangelical churches in this area, and I think the Republican Party has capitalized on that in terms of their own philosophy and politics. I think the concentration of the Republican Party on rural areas across America has also affected deep southern Illinois, downstate Illinois. In the last election, Donald Trump came to Evansville, Indiana. He came to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, both right on our border. He came to southern Illinois at the airport here, 3 miles from my home. You can't get a Democrat presidential candidate to come downstate to the rural area. I think our party has become urban-centric in many ways, and we need help in the rural areas. I think we need more concentration for things that Democrats have traditionally stood for in the way of economics, public health, education, infrastructure, and those kinds of things. And
you mentioned the evangelical church and its influence over some of the thinking or maybe the moral compass in the party. Just this week in the city of St. Louis, the Progressive National Baptist Convention was held here, and it was a bunch of black Democrats mainly that were progressives. They said they didn't really fit into any one party, but they did speak with that religious clarity, that voice there. Do you see a pathway or a political strategy? Does that have to be part of the winning strategy for Democrats to build back up in southern Illinois or in rural America?
Democrats have to be very clear on defining who they are, because the misinformation that's been put out there about Democrats through the evangelical churches, beginning all the way back with the movement started years ago, even when I was in Congress with the Christian Coalition, portrays Democrats as being anti-religion, anti-Christ, all over the abortion issue. I think if you look at what happened in Kansas this year, if you look at what happened yesterday in Ohio, that may not be a winning issue any longer for the Republican Party when it comes to the next general election. It's very powerful to the Republican base. The country has changed a lot on that issue, and that may be playing more to the Democrat side of the equation now than the Republican side. The Republicans have used the abortion issue to define the Democrats in the eyes of those evangelicals. May not be working anymore.
You no longer have to answer to voters, and the circumstances in the country have changed quite considerably since you last held office. But how has your thinking changed, if at all, on that issue of abortion?
Well, I've always been a pro-life Democrat. I've always said that that's a matter of personal conscience, according to my faith, according to my family in which I was raised. I'm not at liberty to desert my conscience or my faith any more than many other people. However, I think we have to be very clear here. I don't define what other people's position is on that issue. People have a right to make up their own mind on that issue according to their personal faith and maybe their family and maybe what they believe is important between them and their doctor and their God. And so I don't attempt to proselytize my view on that issue toward anybody.
You used to represent in Congress a big swath of southern Illinois that is now part of the Illinois 12th congressional district, and there are two Republicans running in a primary race there. We expect it to be very much a race to the right. The incumbent, Mike Bost, a military veteran like yourself, and the challenger, Darren Bailey, who ran for governor and lost like yourself. How closely are you watching this race, and what issues do you think will turn voters one way or the other?
Well, I've listened to several interviews now of both of those gentlemen. Known Mike Bost for many years, and quite a large part of the congressional district, which I represented at one time, has been in Mr. Bailey's Senate district, state Senate district, for some time. I haven't heard either one of them articulate why they're different than the other person. They both have the very same views, which are mostly Trumpian views. They believe in former President Trump. They believe in whatever he stands for. They can't define how they differ from each other. What they speak about mostly are cultural war issues. And Mr. Bailey, I think, has taken that to the extremes on many occasions. I think Bost is a little bit more moderate in some of his views. But when it comes to voting, Congressman Bost disappointed me greatly when he voted to overturn the results of the last election, despite having evidence that 60 cases had been filed and all of them lost by the former president. He had tried to prevail upon Republican governors to change the election results, and they resisted. He tried to prevail upon Republican Secretary of States in those swing states. They resisted. He sent false electors to Congress. Everyone knew that was wrong. Incited what happened on January 6th in Washington, D.C. as an attack on the Capitol. Yet in the face of all of that evidence, there was a vote cast to overturn the results of the election with no proof whatsoever of widespread fraud that would have made any difference. That disappointed me greatly. But I'm sure had Darren Bailey been there, he would have made the same vote. If the Democrats are fortunate enough to have a reasonable middle ground, moderate candidate present themselves in this election, that this could turn out to be a very good race. People are going to watch very closely these indictments and these trials. If these candidates continue to back what I think these court findings are going to come up with, I think that could turn a lot of people against them.
That will be very interesting to watch. One person who we know is decided in that primary race is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He'll be in the Metro East endorsing raising money for Mike Bost very soon. Glenn Pichard will be back with us in just a moment. More news around Illinois and Missouri politics still to come, and President Biden's second cabinet official visiting the St. Louis area in a 2-week span. We correct the record later this hour. We're back in just a moment with more with Glenn Pichard.
Get the content that matters to you on your time. Breaking news as it happens.
We are following breaking news at this hour.
Weather alerts when you need them. Live streams and newscasts on your schedule. On air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter where you go or how you watch, 5 on your side. Focused on you.
What's the forecast in Florida?
What's it like in Belleville?
No matter where you are.
What's the forecast in St. Peter's?
Or how you get your weather.
We know you want the forecast for your backyard. And you want it now.
Right here and right now.
The 5 on your side, Weather First team. Focused on you.
Most people think this is St. Louis, but we know better. It's our neighborhoods, our people, and that's our focus. Because no story is bigger than the one that affects you. 5 on your side, focused on you.
We're back now with Glenn Pichard, a former Democratic gubernatorial candidate, and he represented Southern Illinois in Congress for a decade, out with a new book now. Good to have you back with us. Why come out with this book now, and what is the takeaway you hope people read in it?
Well, Mark, I'm getting to be an older man now. In a couple of years, I'll be 80 years old. So I thought if I'm going to share my varied experiences of life and perhaps help folks understand some of the situations I've been in and how I've chosen to handle those, I probably better do it sooner than later. I wanted my grandchildren to have some understanding of how I've handled various things in my life, as well as the public. So sat down with Carl Walworth and we spent many, many hours over the last 5 years, him researching and interviewing people and visiting my record in Congress and the state Senate and so on, and decided to go ahead and write the book. Got a picture on the front of it, if I may be so bold as to show it to you. I'm standing in front of the old polling place where when I was just a kid, my father would always take me on every election to that polling place, and we would stand and watch the judges count the vote until well into the night.
There you go, poll watching, a tried and true American political tradition, I suppose. You broach two topics in the book: one, mental health, and two, child abuse, both heavy topics. And I don't know that they're unique to rural America, but they certainly are present in rural America. Were those issues difficult to talk about, and how do you foster that broader conversation in a moment where so much of rural American political discourse focuses instead on conversations in the classroom or on cultural issues?
Well, I can only broach the mental health issue by virtue of my own experience with it. When I was 13 years old, my sister and three of my very best friends were tragically killed in an automobile accident. It impacted me greatly because my sister was the closest person in the world to me, and my mom and dad were precious to me. And when I went into the Army on my 17th birthday, I was sent to Korea, and I worked in an orphanage there in my spare time, where there were hundreds of poor children left homeless by the war. And all of these things began to impact me. When I came home from Korea, my best friend, my first cousin, was the first young man killed in Vietnam in our county. And I had never dealt with the emotional impact that all these things had on my life. I just buried it. Poor farmers' kids don't see psychologists, and poor farmers don't either, by the way. And in the course of being treated, I went through electroshock therapy, and that really devastated me. Came out on the other side, I think, stronger and better. I understand what folks go through when they go through mental health issues, and I have supported policy-wise many, many efforts to bring better mental health care to people, particularly in the rural areas where you just don't have the access that you do in the more urban areas. When I lost the governor's race, my wife and I got up the next morning and said, what do we want to do now for the next step in our life? And we decided that what we wanted to do was take care of abused, neglected, and abandoned children, because in almost every community, we formed a foundation in 1999. Next year will be our 25th anniversary, and we take care of hundreds of abused, neglected, and abandoned children every year. And that's been our reason for getting up in the morning.
I have a lot more context inside the pages of Glenn Pichard's new book, The Son of Southern Illinois. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And we're back in just a moment.
Get the content that matters to you on your time. Breaking news as it happens.
We are following breaking news at this hour.
Weather alerts when you need them. Live streams and newscasts on your schedule. On air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter where you go or how you watch, 5 on your side, focused on you. At Today in St. Louis, we put weather first, so you're the first to know. We're up early with the local weather coverage you need to start your day. Plus, the latest news from overnight. Wake up every morning with Today in St. Louis. The forecast for your family. News from your community. On air or on your schedule. Streaming on the 5+ app. The 5 on your side Weather First forecast on Today in St. Louis. Focused on you. At Today in St. Louis, we put weather first. So you're the first to know. We're up early with the local weather coverage you need to start your day. Plus, the latest news from overnight. Wake up every morning with Today in St. Louis. The forecast for your family. News from your community. On air or on your schedule. Streaming on the 5+ app. The 5 on your side Weather First forecast on Today in St. Louis. Focused on you. Get the content that matters to you on your time. Breaking news as it happens. Weather alerts when you need them. On air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter how you watch, 5 on your side. Focused on you.
Welcome back for a look at what's making news in local politics. This week, marking 9 years since a Ferguson police officer shot and killed Michael Brown. That's sparking protest across the country. It was August 9th, 2014, when a confrontation on Canfield Drive led to former Ferguson officer Darren Wilson opening fire on Michael Brown, killing him. He was 18 years old then. Charges were never filed against the officer. That high-profile case also playing a major role in the Black Lives Matter movement. And this week, Michael Brown's father, Chosen for Change organization, hosting a memorial on Canfield Drive. Also this week, black faith leaders in downtown St. Louis were here for an annual convention. Leaders with the Progressive National Baptist Convention paying respects to Michael Brown on the anniversary of his death yesterday. The convention brought together a new generation of civil rights activists who are continuing the Rainbow Push coalition that Reverend Jesse Jackson led for decades.
We're going to do all we can to register as many voters as possible so that we can, as the Progressive National Baptist Convention, uphold democracy.
Leaders with the PNBC hope and believe that younger voters will, in fact, head out in the polls in 2024, driving change. President Biden is showing support for a Senate amendment that would expand federal help to people sickened by radiation caused by the Manhattan Project. Radioactive material from the project was developed and dumped in the St. Louis region. Last month, the Senate passed Senator Josh Hawley's amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. The president making those comments yesterday, making news while on a visit in New Mexico. The president saying in part, quote, "I'm prepared to help in terms of making sure that those folks are taken care of. The amendment still needs to be approved by the House before it heads to President Biden's desk." And Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm promoted an American Renaissance in manufacturing at this ribbon-cutting event in South St. Louis earlier this week. The ICL plant will make key components to electric vehicle batteries and speed up the arrival of more affordable EVs. The federal-funded push will help spur America's competition with China for that growing market share. More on her visit when we come back.
What's the forecast in Florida?
What's it like in Belleville?
No matter where you are.
What's the forecast in St. Peter's?
Or how you get your weather.
We know you want the forecast for your backyard. And you want it now.
Right here and right now.
The 5 on your side Weather First team. Focused on you.
Most people think this is St. Louis, but we know better. The real St. Louis isn't a postcard. It's our neighborhoods, our communities, our people, and that's our focus. 5 on your side is here to tell the stories that affect your neighborhood, that impact your family, that matter to you. Because no story is bigger than the one that affects you. 5 on your side, focused on you.
Before we go, we have to correct the record. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm was in town this week to promote the effects of President Biden's bipartisan Build Back Better infrastructure bill. Standing in the backyard of a St. Louis woman, Granholm asked her to describe to reporters how much she was saving on her electric bill as a result of the president's plan. But then she said this.
And the federal government sent to Missouri an additional 10 times what they would have. So that normally on an annual appropriation they would have gotten about $7 million to do weatherization, and now they have $77 million to do weatherization. So it's a huge 10 times expansion of what you all are doing. So thank you so much. Obviously, Congressman Bush voted for the bipartisan infrastructure law, which made that happen. HELP was a leader in that.
Except the record shows that's not quite right. To her credit, though, Congresswoman Bush, who was standing just out of frame of that initial camera shot, quietly corrected the record and said, "I did not." Did you want to clarify your position on the infrastructure bill?
Well, again, as I said before, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is a bill that I worked with, that I championed from the very beginning. We wanted the fullness of the bill, and one thing that for me was tough is if you even just walk through this neighborhood, when I walk through my district, when I drive through my district, and I see the poverty and I understand it. The same way with Miss Denise, I remember having bills that were so high. My electric bill continued to skyrocket, and I didn't change anything. And you talked about that. I didn't change anything, but my bill would be higher and higher, and I just couldn't understand why I couldn't pay it. What was happening? Making sure that we weren't taking 40% of children out of poverty, putting them, taking them out and then putting them back into poverty was a huge thing for me. And so it was not that I was not an advocate for the bill at all. It was that I was an advocate for the bill, and I wanted the fullness, because St. Louis deserves a full investment of everything that we can get from the federal government, and we need also for our states to understand that as well. So that's the that's the issue. It was never, Corey was not a supporter of the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
The Congresswoman had previously advocated for that so-called human infrastructure, much of which was stripped out of the final provision, but now she finds herself in that precarious position where she wants credit for championing a bill that she voted against. And that position is becoming something of a trend in Washington, D.C., where politicians say they can't support something if the final compromise doesn't include everything they wanted to begin with. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and President Biden, they came up with a term for this. When Republicans showed up to take credit for bills they voted against in their districts, they called it vote no and take the dough. That does it for us this week. We do hope to see you right back here with a special state fair version of the record at the same time next week. Both state fairs, Illinois and Missouri, are underway now. Until then, we're off the record.